Hey guys, Sullivan Owen here in Philadelphia. So I thought that I would answer one of the more common questions I get, which is how did I become a floral designer? And it's a question I get a lot, but I saw it come up a couple times on my giveaway video, which is my previous video, and I am giving away one of my event toolkits. So watch that video. It's the video right before this one to watch and enter to win the toolkit. But how did I become a floral designer? Well, it could be a long story. Well, I was born on a cold December day in 1970. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to start back that far. I'm going to start back 10 years ago. I was working in retail visual merchandising and retail store design. It was something that I got into after college. I ended up dropping out of college to work in retail environment design and found myself working for a company that I wasn't really gelling with. And so let's say right around actually almost exactly 11 years ago, right around this time of year, I found myself sitting in the human resources office of my employer being told that my department was restructuring, which was something that had happened every 6 months. It was 2008, 2009 recession, and my job didn't exist. And so I was getting the boot or performance mesh cross-training shoe to the rear might have been the more appropriate way to describe it. And I was miserable anyway. But the fact that I was being told that I didn't have a job anymore still didn't feel good. I had definitely wanted to leave, but I wanted to leave on my own terms, not be told that I didn't have a job anymore. So here I am sitting in the human resources office being told that I'm no longer going to have a position in the newly restructured department. And I had just been back at work, having gotten married and gone on my honeymoon. I had been back at work for 7 whole days. So newly married with no job. I was exposed during the course of the previous year before I found myself losing my job. I was exposed to the wedding industrial complex. It is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. And up till that point, it had really seemed predicated on following like a checklist of things that you had to do. And that didn't really feel like me or my husband, Tim. And so of all the things that I enjoyed about designing my wedding, which I really treated like a store opening, or I created a merchandising plan, there was visual direction, there was a whole PDF PowerPoint of how specifically I wanted greenery and ferns placed, because it turns out I wasn't actually going to be there to make sure that the decorating happened, but I really handcrafted and DIY'd a ton of stuff for my wedding because that's the kind of person I am. I'm always making things, and I always was. I was sewing my own clothes or learning to make whatever caught my fancy back then. And I really enjoyed it. And not just because it was my own wedding, though I do think that some people may, in a misguided attempt to recreate the joy and passion they felt around their own wedding, jump into the wedding industry, which is not always a great thing. But for me, I really connected with making my own personal story the narrative for the space that I was taking. And I was also fascinated with the art of cakes. Tim really enjoyed tasting all the cakes, but I was just so interested in how they looked. Even though ultimately we ended up having a very simple cake, I loved the detail of sugar flowers and the artistry of cake designers like Ron Ben Israel and Sylvia Weinstock, and these like incredibly artistic and detailed cakes. So here I am, and I had been already contemplating a career change to something in weddings, maybe cakes, maybe going to pastry school, maybe flowers. And now I didn't have a job. And fortunately, we had a pretty affordable wedding. We were in a position that I was going to have to take some time to find another job because it wasn't a great economy. It wasn't a great time to be looking for a job doing what I did anyway. And so I found myself with some time to kind of really figure things out. I had also gotten diagnosed with celiac disease right around this time as well. So pastry school pretty much seemed like a non-starter. I don't think that I would have been able to be a very good pastry chef if I couldn't taste what I was making. I'm married, I'm unemployed, I'm lost. My self-confidence is so low because, like I said, I was basically kicking myself for 2 years that I was doing this job anyway. It was such a miserable experience. And I had left a really good job, a job where I was happy. And so I was really doubting my ability to make good choices. And I was a newlywed. So I was like, okay, weddings are going to be a thing. We're not millennials, but we are, I guess, Generation X. And I was looking at millennials. A lot of the people I worked with at this company were younger than me. And I was like, I think weddings are going to be a big thing. And so I was like, okay, I think I want to do flowers, or at least I want to start with flowers. If I can get good at flowers, then I know that that's an aspect of the environment and the decor. And I thought it was so important to weddings that that's where I wanted to start. And so I started looking around for places that I could learn, and I found so many choices for how you could learn flowers. And I really wanted to go to school. I don't know that I think that everyone has to go to school. There are lots of really talented people who are self-taught in flowers, but I think my draw to going to school to learn flowers was that I dropped out of college. I was in art school and I dropped out to go work for the early days of Urban Outfitters. And I guess I kind of carried like a little bit of that thing where you feel like because you didn't graduate college, you have to try harder in some ways. And so I think I looked at my opportunity to start something new. I wanted to get the best education possible because I was in my early 30s. I was going to be a much more responsible student than I was, which is basically why I dropped out of school. I started taking classes. I took all kinds of classes. I think now there's so many choices, and honestly, you've got a lot of the blind leading the blind in terms of classes. But at the time, there were fewer choices, and I ended up choosing a variety of classes. I think there's a misconception that I only studied really high-end New York design, and that's true. I did learn a lot from some New York-based designers, but I also took classes at Longwood Gardens, which teaches a much more floral design, a much more traditional program that is grounded in some ways, antiquated design principles that come from floral competition. So after spending maybe 18 months taking classes, I had managed to get a couple of internships where I think the places that you learn the most are busy delivery shops or places that do regular, almost daily event work. Someplace where they're turning over lots and lots of work. You're going to pick up the most by being in a busy business environment, which is really, I think, what the point of apprenticeship or internship is. And you should be sweeping floors and washing buckets and just kind of keeping your head down and paying attention to what's going on. I washed buckets and potted orchids for 6 months and swept the floor. So I think something that might surprise you guys is that I never intended to open up my own design studio. I had been a company person. I was a worker bee. I loved working for big companies. I had always had jobs in big corporate retail businesses where your creativity contributed to the overall success of something larger. And I think that was what I wanted in a flower job. I wanted to get a staff design job at like a cool studio. Through my interning and contacts, I was able to get a bunch of freelance work, and I worked on all kinds of jobs and really learned the logistics of like large scale events for 600 people. And I got a job at a flower shop that was really, frankly, struggling and ultimately went out of business a few years later, where I was a designer. And I tried to contribute to that company as much as I could in the capacity I had as like a part-time designer. It was failing for reasons that the owners could not face. And ultimately, I realized that I was waiting for the floral community that already existed to catch up to what I was already seeing, which was a need for this next generation of floral consumers they wanted something different. And nobody that was already out there doing flowers in Philadelphia, or even really in New York, because this was when everything was just kind of taking off in terms of Brooklyn and things like that. But nobody was really seeing it. And I ended up deciding that I didn't want to put those ideas and that vision that I had for what flowers could be into somebody else's business. But I'm not the personality type that's best suited for self-employment. While I am very much a self-starter and an independent thinker, I liked the stability of regular paychecks and healthcare and things like that. So, and I also, it can be a struggle. You have to maintain so much confidence in your ideas and your ability to push things forward when basically everything is pointing to it not working, or it taking, at this point, I should just be used to things taking so much longer than I think they're going to, but I still find myself struggling with unrealistic, one of my longtime employees calls me a time optimist, and I am. I think it's going to take way less time to do everything. Although now at least I plan my schedule so that there is extra time if things are not going the way that they should be. It just really, all signs were sort of pointing to me doing my own thing. And I didn't know what that would look like. I just knew that I believed that I saw flowers differently, and that if people could see what I was doing with flowers, they would think differently about them as well. And so I just randomly looked on Craigslist to see what a studio space in Philadelphia might cost. And my old apartment building, where I had the loveliest landlords, a small apartment building with just a couple units in it, had a ground floor, former art gallery, former law office space available. I sent them an email. They wrote me right back. They were so excited to hear from me because I had left the apartment and been living with Tim. And that was that. It just seemed like it was affordable. It seemed like a low risk. It was a 1-year lease. So ultimately that ended up not being a great decision, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, I think that is how I got into floral design. And I think I should stress that this is my experience, and my life experiences in retail and in environmental design and in aesthetic design led me to have Sullivan Owen, the business that I have. And you have to find yours. And I would encourage anyone who's considering starting in the floral design business, or really any creative business, the thing that's missing in all the workshops and the DIYs and the how-tos and the you can do this is that you have to be serving a need that is out there that isn't being filled. The reason that my floral design work took off 10 years ago when I decided to open up that studio in Philadelphia was there was no one offering flowers like mine. And the reason it still works is because I'm me and I see flowers a specific way, and my loyal and small pool of clients appreciate that. But there's a danger in floral design of just going out there and doing what everyone else is doing. And I don't see that working long term. I don't see that being a business that you can have for 10, 15, 20 years. I don't see it as something, because it already exists. The thing that keeps me grounded and keeps me grateful for what I do is that I realize and recognize and have for a long time, it's a tremendous privilege to get to choose to do what I do. It is a gift that I have worked hard for. It is a gift that my talent has helped to support, that my skill at growing a business has helped to support, but it's still a privilege to get to do something that you love and make a living from it. That's not a given. That is a little bit of how I got to be a floral designer. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment if there are any other specific questions that came up from what I talked about today. And I really look forward to sharing my Thanksgiving video with you guys. Hopefully it makes you smile, because I've been working on the props for it for a while, and they just make me laugh every time I see them. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you soon.